Some mornings seem peaceful, but turned out to be the beginning of a battle no one saw coming. A woman of color, pregnant, in a wheelchair, only wanting to have breakfast with her son at the hotel. A police officer, requiring no evidence, only prejudice. A child witnessing his mother being humiliated, restrained and handcuffed. And then a man walks in. He doesn't need to say his name, because with just one look, the whole room falls silent. Chuck Norris has returned, not to cause chaos, but to keep a promise he made to a fallen brother. To protect that man's family. To stand between right and wrong, and never back down. This is not just the story of a legend. It's a declaration of justice, courage, and humanity in a chaotic age. Morning at Sanctuary Bay. The sunlight filtered gently like golden silk. The air smelled of coffee and sea salt, blending with the cries of seagulls gliding across the pale blue sky. With cobblestone paths and carefully tended herb gardens, this was a perfect refuge for those seeking escape from the world outside. Angela Moore, 42 years old, sat in an electric wheelchair, watching her son as he darted around the central fountain. Ethan, a 7-year-old with a curly head and a mischievous smile, was leaping to catch drifting soap bubbles made by a hotel staff member to entertain the children. He giggled and waved back at his mother. Angela smiled. That serene strength of a woman who has weathered many storms. She wore an aqua maternity dress, her legs were slightly swollen, she was in her 8th month of pregnancy. The wheelchair had been her constant companion for the past 2 months, since the doctor advised against walking due to preeclampsia risks. When Ethan asked why she needed a wheelchair, she would pat his head and say, "The baby in Mummy's belly needs her to save energy to grow strong." To Angela, this vacation at Sanctuary Bay was not just a getaway, it was a gift. A gift she had secretly planned over 2 months to make up for Ethan, the child who patiently endured her fatigue, his lonely online classes, and silent dinners where, instead of talking, Mummy just lay there with red, tear-stained eyes. But above all, this was a reunion. Chuck, her quiet, devoted husband, had promised to return today. Ethan didn't know. Angela held that secret like a precious gem. They once thought they would never have a second child, not after the tragedy of Derek, Chuck's brother in all but blood, who passed away from cancer. Angela nearly fell into depression, and Chuck withdrew from the screen, from the sets, leaving behind only brief messages. "I'll be home soon, just one more scene." Angela had learned not to expect too much, but today she believed in that promise. She looked at the clock, 10:12 IEM. According to the plan, Chuck's flight from Vancouver would land at 9:30, plus about an hour of travel. If everything went well, Ethan would soon be in the arms of the father he still thought was a superhero on a mission abroad. Angela nudged her joystick slightly and glided toward Ethan. The boy ran to her instantly. "Mummy, I caught a bubble as big as an orange." Angela chuckled, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Today is a special day, sweetheart. What would you like to do first? The pool, dessert buffet, or cartoons in the mini-cinema?" Ethan thought fast. "Let's have cake first, then go to the rooftop to look at the ocean. Remember, Mommy? There's a huge bench up there where we can lie down and watch the clouds." Angela smiled. "Yes, but Mummy has a surprise for you too. You have to be patient till this afternoon." Ethan's eyes widened. "What surprise? Tell me just a little, please." Angela shook her head, placing a finger on her lips. "Secret." They both laughed. The scene, a mother in a wheelchair and her clingy son, looked no different than any other family, except for one thing. They had learned to live in fear, which made every peaceful moment feel like a treasure. And just as they entered the hotel lobby, where lights shone through a magnificent glass dome and piano notes floated in the air, a cold presence awaited them. Lieutenant Carl Dempsey, head of the hotel's internal security team, stood by the reception desk. his eyes scanning like a radar. He was in his 50s, tall, square-jawed, buzz-cut silver hair, the kind of ex-military man who never really left the battlefield. As soon as he saw Angela entering via the accessibility entrance, he frowned slightly. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, stepping forward and blocking her path. "This entrance is for guests with proper medical certification only." Angela was surprised but remained calm. "I have certification. I am in my 8th month of pregnancy with mobility complications." Carl glanced at the boy beside her, then said, "You look fine. Don't think I don't know this trick. People like you always have a sad story ready." Angela was stunned. Ethan clutched her hand tighter. The air around them thickened, filled only with the hum of the air conditioning and chandelier reflections in her eyes, shifting from surprise to hurt. No one yet knew. This was just the beginning of the storm. Angela froze under Carl's cold stare. His hand hovered over his belt, where a walkie-talkie and a pair of handcuffs peeked out from under his coat. "I can't let you proceed without official verification," Carl emphasized, "and printed papers can be faked." Angela swallowed, trying to keep her voice steady. "I have documentation from my OB/GYN with an official seal. I can show you." She opened her bag and pulled out a neatly clipped folder. Carl didn't even glance at it. He folded his arms and turned to a nearby receptionist. "Call the surveillance team on the 2nd floor. Verify this guest's file. She's to remain here until cleared." Ethan tugged at his mother, nervous. "Mummy, why is that man talking like that?" Angela rubbed his back. "It's okay, baby. We've done nothing wrong." Carl tilted his head, his tone mocking. "Nothing wrong? Then why use the priority entrance, demand special treatment, and bring a kid as your shield?" The words struck like a blade. The lobby went quiet. Guests glanced over, whispering. Angela wavered. Her eyes were glossy. "I just want to have breakfast with my son. We have a reservation. If you need to check, I understand. But please, don't say things like that in front of my child." Carl showed no remorse. He took photos of her documents, then gestured to 2 staffers. One snapped a picture of her room card. The other blocked the path. Angela looked around. She felt like a criminal under arrest. But for what? For being in a wheelchair, pregnant, or the color of her skin? "May I ask what you suspect me of?" Her tone now carried a quiet defiance. Carl smirked. "I suspect you're abusing priority policies for personal gain. I have the right to verify. This hotel's been duped before." Angela bit her lips so hard it bled. Ethan whispered, "Mummy, why are they doing this?" "Because they're afraid of people like me, being different than what they expect." She turned back to Carl, her voice firm. "I don't need special treatment. I need fair treatment. If verification is required, I'll wait, but I demand you not insult or humiliate me or my son." Carl crossed his arms. "You can sit over there, just don't cause trouble." Angela wheeled toward a corner, but Ethan clung to her arm. "Don't go, Mummy. I'm scared." The boy looked around, the gaze of a child who once believed all adults were kind. Now that belief trembled. A middle-aged woman approached, whispering, "I'm sorry for what's happening. It's not right. Do you need a witness?" Angela nodded slightly, grateful. At that moment, a few blocks away, Chuck Norris was in a rented SUV. The driver turned onto the coastal road toward Sanctuary Bay. He checked his watch. 10:49. He should have arrived half an hour ago, but delays from weather and car delivery slowed him down. Still, Chuck thought he'd make it. He imagined Angela in the sunshine, Ethan laughing nearby. He smiled. His heart beat faster. 7 months of filming in Canada. All he held on to was the thought of his family. The promise to Derek. The fear of losing what matters most in pursuit of a job. He texted Angela, "Almost there. 10 minutes. Love you." No reply. Chuck's heart tightened. Not because she didn't answer, Sometimes she forgot her phone. But something felt off. A gut feeling, an instinct, told him something was wrong. Back at Sanctuary Bay, Lieutenant Carl had called in 2 local police officers for backup. The air grew tense. Ethan began to cry. One of the officers, the younger one, hesitated. "Lieutenant, maybe we should go easier. She seems genuinely pregnant." Carl snapped. "Seems doesn't matter. She's uncooperative. If those papers are fake, it's fraud." Angela remained silent. She was too exhausted to argue. Her belly ached in waves. Her hands gripped the wheelchair like it was the only thing holding her upright in this storm of injustice. Ethan sobbed, throwing his arms around her. "I don't want them to take you. You didn't do anything wrong." Carl turned to the other officer. "Cuff her. We're taking her in." The chilling sound of metal filled the air as the cuffs came out. And then a voice boomed like thunder. "Stop." Everyone turned. Chuck Norris was standing at the hotel entrance. The glass revolving door of the Sanctuary Bay Hotel came to a sudden halt as a tall, composed figure stepped through. The light shimmered off his copper-streaked hair, now tinged with silver. No introduction was needed. Everyone knew who he was. Chuck Norris had just walked in. His presence sliced through the noise like a tidal wave, the murmuring guests crowding around the controversy involving a pregnant woman of color and her son fell silent, holding their breath. Angela didn't see him. Her head was bowed, hands gripping her son's tightly, lips pressed together from a sudden contraction. She was used to enduring, but this time, the humiliation in front of her child, combined with the pain in her abdomen, pushed her beyond her limits. Carl still had no idea what was coming. He signaled to security. "Cuff her and call Child Protective Services for the boy." His voice was cold, robotic. Chuck said nothing. He strode across the tiled hallway, gliding past stunned onlookers like a storm front. "Stop, Carl," Charles' voice echoed. Warm, steady but firm as steel. Carl spun around, scowling. "Who are you?" Chuck didn't answer. He stepped forward, placing himself between Angela and the cuffs. Then he bent down, gently touching her shoulder, his expression softening as he saw her pale face drenched in sweat. Ethan immediately flung himself at him. "Uncle Chuck, Mum. Mum's really hurting." Angela slowly opened her eyes, barely recognizing the familiar silhouette. "Chuck, I'm here." No more words were needed. He bent down and lifted her in his arms, as if she were the most delicate flower. Angela didn't resist. She had no strength left. Her head rested against his chest, one hand still clutching Ethan's. Carl stepped forward, barking. "Put her down. This is an active investigation. You're interfering." Chuck turned, his eyes shifting from warmth to ice in a blink. "She is my wife. She's pregnant. And you just insulted, threatened, and hurt her in front of her son." Carl scoffed. "Wife? Are you sure? Because I haven't seen any documentation." Chuck didn't need documentation. The answer came from dozens of phones raised in the air, from the gazes of countless witnesses, and from Ethan, now standing protectively in front of his mother, glaring at Carl with fiery eyes. "We recorded everything," an elderly guest shouted. "Everyone saw it. She did nothing wrong. You crossed the line." Carl froze. Control was slipping from his hands. Chuck turned to Angela. "I'm taking you to the hospital. Hold on to me." He nodded at Ethan. "Let's go, champ. We're not leaving Mum behind." Ethan wiped his tears and followed. The hotel doors closed behind them, leaving a stunned crowd, shameful glances, and an officer being filmed from every angle. The incident at Sanctuary Bay was no longer a private matter. Within 3 hours of Chuck Norris carrying Angela to the hospital, footage of Lieutenant Carl Dempsey interrogating, insulting, and ordering the arrest of a pregnant woman of color in front of her child had gone viral. From Twitter to Facebook, Reddit to nightly news, the world saw Ethan sobbing into his mother's hand and Chuck lifting Angela like a modern-day hero. Media outlets dug into Carl Dempsey's history, uncovering numerous complaints of bias and excessive force. Public outrage swelled. Demands for independent investigation followed. Angela stabilized at the hospital, though emotionally scarred. The baby remained safe, but doctors advised bed rest for the remainder of her pregnancy. Ethan never left her side. Chuck barely slept, holding her hand constantly. "Do you regret trusting me?" Chuck asked, eyes heavy with concern. Angela shook her head, offering a tired but sincere smile. "I only regret that I'd grown so used to injustice that I forgot how to fight. But you reminded me that sometimes one person standing up is enough to change everything." Meanwhile, city police held a press conference, but in front of hundreds of reporters, the department downplayed the situation, calling it a security miscommunication. The cold, bureaucratic language only fueled the public's fury. Protests spread, not in chaos, but in peaceful marches. Children, elders, and the disabled walked side by side, holding signs with Angela and Ethan's photo. "We will not be silent." Chuck didn't incite rebellion. He didn't condemn. He told Angela's story, raw, heartfelt, and full of compassion, on national television. This isn't just about a mother of color. It's about everyone who's ever been doubted, disrespected, or silenced. It's a reminder: kindness doesn't require a uniform. The quote became a national slogan: kindness doesn't require a uniform. The hotel issued a public apology and fired Carl Dempsey. But Chuck wasn't done. He partnered with civil rights attorneys to launch a lawsuit, not just for Angela, but for others who had suffered similarly. Angela, once just a woman seeking peace, had become a symbol. But what touched her most was Ethan. He left a letter on her hospital pillow. "I don't know why you had to hurt Mummy, but I know you're the strongest person in the world. If anyone hurts you again, I'll learn martial arts from Uncle Chuck and protect you." Angela cried. Not out of sorrow, but love. Rebirth. A spirit awakened from silence. For the first time, she wasn't alone in her fight for justice. Part 5. Faith restored when life is welcomed by humanity. 3 weeks after the incident at Sanctuary Bay, room 402 of St. Emily Hospital was filled with golden sunlight. Beside the bed, Chuck Norris sat silently, one hand holding Angela's, the other gently brushing Ethan's hair. The boy had fallen asleep, still clutching a cloth doll he called the baby. "I never thought I'd be here," Chuck whispered. "Not on a movie set, but in real life, where everything is real." Angela turned, her face weary but eyes strong. "I didn't think I'd survive that day, but with you, with Ethan, and the strangers who stood up for us, it was more than I ever dreamed." The door creaks open. A nurse enters, smiling. "Congratulations, she's ready to meet the world." Angela held her breath. Chuck squeezed her hand. The door opened wider, and a small bassinet was wheeled in. Inside, a tiny newborn girl wrapped in a cream blanket, eyes closed, her face peaceful. "She's healthy," said the nurse, "and strong. We've never seen a newborn kick that hard during heart checks. It's like she knew how to fight in the womb." Angela laughed, then cried. Chuck kissed the baby's forehead and whispered, "Welcome, Hope." That was the name they'd chosen, Hope. Born into adversity, yet a symbol of the purest truth. Life welcomed by compassion, regardless of skin, status, or stigma. Outside the hospital, thousands gathered, not to protest, but for a charity concert in the plaza, where Chuck, Angela, and Ethan would appear shortly. Artists sang ballads about courage. Children held signs saying, "Thank you, Miss Angela, for not giving up." Elder veterans stood in uniform holding signs, "I fought for justice then, I still fight today." At the center stood a giant photo, Angela in her wheelchair holding Ethan, Chuck's silhouette shielding them. As Angela was wheeled out in Chuck's arms, the plaza fell silent. Then, a little girl's voice rang out. "She's a real superhero." Like dominoes, applause followed, soft at first, then thunderous. No slogans are needed. Their presence was the most powerful statement. A reporter approached Chuck. "Do you have anything to say to America today?" Chuck embraced Angela and Ethan, standing tall before the cameras. "I'm no hero. I'm just a man keeping a promise to a fallen brother. But this mother, who endured insult, clung to her child while threatened with a gun, and kept her dignity, she's the real hero." He turned to the crowd, his voice calm but resounding. "We can be anyone, doctors, workers, actors, or homemakers, but when injustice knocks, we must choose silence or action." The applause roared again, this time with tears. Angela won the lawsuit. Lieutenant Carl Dempsey was fired, stripped of his badge, and prosecuted for abuse of power and human rights violations. Sanctuary Bay was forced to apologize and pay restitution. But what mattered more to Angela was that Ethan knew his mother had done no wrong, and hope was born into a world where justice was no longer a distant dream. A year later, Angela published a book, The Day They Saw Me, a raw, honest chronicle. It became a bestseller. Ethan started martial arts lessons, with Chuck Norris as his teacher. And Chuck? He still acted, but when asked about his favorite role, he simply smiled. Being a real-life dad. What seemed like a tragedy became a symbol of hope, that one person can change the fate of many, that truth will find the light, that love, despite pain, always prevails. As Angela wrote, "We don't need to be superheroes to protect each other, we just need to be human." You may ask, was this real? No, it's fiction. But the pain, the prejudice, the silence, those are real. And so is a father's love. A vow kept to a brother who's gone. A community that refused to look away. Chuck Norris didn't just fight back, he changed the system. Not with fists, but with truth. Not with fame, but with faith. And so a town was transformed. A family reborn. A child who now knows justice exists, even if it takes a punch from Chuck Norris. If this story moved you, share it. Because somewhere out there, other Angelas and Ethans still need us to stand with them. Thank you for staying till the end. Don't just watch, feel, act, and if one day injustice knocks, remember, you're not alone, and sometimes Chuck Norris might be standing right behind you.